The year is 2137. A battered spacecraft trailing smoke and sparks entered Earth's atmosphere. It crash-landed in the Nevada desert. The world watched in awe. Who were these visitors from the stars? The answer sent ripples of fear and compassion across the globe. The survivors called themselves the Caliph. Their spokesperson, Arendor, explained their plight. Their home planet, ravaged by a natural disaster, was dying. The Caliph were desperate. They needed sanctuary. They needed a new home. Earth was their last hope. Arendor's words were broadcast worldwide. His voice, translated by a hastily devised language program, was filled with sorrow. "We come in peace," he pleaded. "Help us. We offer our knowledge, our technology, in exchange for a place on your world." The arrival of the Caliph ignited a firestorm of debate. The world had never seen anything like it. News channels were flooded with images of the alien ships hovering in the sky, and social media was ablaze with speculation and fear. People gathered in public squares, their faces a mix of awe and apprehension. The question on everyone's mind was simple yet profound. What do we do now? Could we trust these aliens? The Caliph claimed to be refugees fleeing from a dying world. They spoke of a catastrophic event that had rendered their planet uninhabitable, and they sought sanctuary on Earth. But their advanced technology and mysterious origins made many people wary. Skepticism was rampant, and trust was in short supply. Were they truly refugees, or invaders in disguise? The world was split. On one side, there were those who believed in the Caliph's plea for help, seeing them as victims of circumstances beyond their control. On the other side, there were those who saw the potential for deception, fearing that the Caliph might have ulterior motives. The debate was fierce, with passionate arguments on both sides. Some, like the brilliant Dr. Lila Morgan, a leading astrophysicist, urged compassion. Dr. Morgan had spent her career studying the cosmos and believed that the Caliph's story was plausible. She argued that humanity had a moral obligation to help those in need, regardless of their origin. Her voice was a beacon of hope in a sea of uncertainty. "We cannot turn our backs on those in need," she argued. Dr. Morgan's speeches were filled with emotion and conviction, and she quickly became a leading figure in the pro-Caliph movement. Her message was simple: compassion knows no boundaries. She reminded people of humanity's own history of seeking refuge and the importance of extending a helping hand. "It is our moral duty to help." Dr. Morgan's words resonated with many, and her call for compassion sparked a wave of support. People began to organize rallies and events to show solidarity with the Caliph. The movement grew, fueled by a shared belief in the power of kindness and empathy. But not everyone was convinced. Others, like the powerful Earth Sovereignty League, vehemently opposed granting the Caliph refuge. The League was a formidable force, with influential members in politics, business, and the military. They argued that humanity's safety must come first, and that the Caliph posed an existential threat. Their message was clear: Earth must be protected at all costs. They saw the aliens as a threat, a potential danger to humanity's dominance. Fear was their weapon. The League's leaders painted a grim picture of a future where humans were subjugated by the Caliph. They warned of the dangers of naivety and the risks of extending trust to an unknown species. Their rhetoric was powerful, and it struck a chord with many who were already fearful. They painted a picture of a future where humans were enslaved by the very beings they had helped. The League's propaganda was effective, and it spread quickly. Images of a dystopian future where humans were oppressed by the Caliph were circulated widely. These fear-mongering tactics created a sense of urgency and desperation, further polarizing the public. The debate raged for weeks. Governments around the world were under immense pressure to make a decision. Parliaments and congresses were scenes of intense debate, with lawmakers struggling to find a consensus. Protests erupted in cities across the globe, with people taking to the streets to voice their opinions. The media covered every twist and turn, adding to the sense of chaos and uncertainty. Governments argued, activists protested, and ordinary people grappled with the moral implications of this unprecedented event. The situation was complex, and there were no easy answers. People from all walks of life found themselves questioning their beliefs and values. The arrival of the Caliph had forced humanity to confront its own fears and prejudices, and the outcome was far from certain. The future of Earth and the Caliph hung precariously in the balance. The world watched and waited, knowing that the decisions made in the coming days would shape the course of history. The stakes were high, and the path forward was unclear. But one thing was certain: the arrival of the Caliph had changed everything, and humanity would never be the same again. In the end, compassion won out. A slim majority of nations voted to grant the Caliph sanctuary. A deserted island continent was chosen as their new home. The Caliph, grateful for this act of kindness, wasted no time in proving their worth. Their advanced technology, shared freely, led to breakthroughs in medicine, energy production, and environmental restoration. Humanity, in turn, shared their knowledge of agriculture, art, and culture with the Caliph. A tentative trust began to build. For a while it seemed as if humans and Caliph might just forge a new future together, a future where both species thrived. Section 4. Shadows of Doubt. The Mysterious Illness and Rising Tensions. This fragile peace, however, was not to last. The world had just begun to settle into a new normal, a delicate balance between humans and the Caliph, when an unexpected crisis emerged. The initial signs were subtle, almost dismissible, but they soon grew impossible to ignore. A mysterious illness began to spread among the human population. It started with a few isolated cases, but within weeks, the numbers surged. Hospitals were overwhelmed and the medical community was baffled. It started slowly, subtly, but soon escalated into a pandemic. The streets, once bustling with life, now echoed with an eerie silence as people retreated into their homes, fearful of the invisible threat. The symptoms were baffling: fatigue, respiratory problems, and a strange, disfiguring skin rash. Doctors and scientists worked around the clock, trying to understand the nature of this new disease, but answers were elusive. Fear returned, stronger than ever. Supermarkets were stripped bare as people hoarded supplies, and the sense of community that had been painstakingly built began to fray. The Earth Sovereignty League, seizing upon this opportunity, pointed fingers at the Caliph. They claimed that the illness was a deliberate act of biological warfare. "We told you they were a threat," they proclaimed. The rhetoric was inflammatory, designed to stoke fear and anger. "This illness is their doing," the League's leaders shouted from podiums and plastered their message across billboards and social media. "They are trying to eliminate us and claim Earth for themselves." The accusations were baseless, but they resonated with a frightened and desperate populace. Despite having no evidence, the League's propaganda took root. People were looking for someone to blame, and the Caliph, with their alien ways and mysterious technology, were an easy target. Mistrust blossomed into open hostility. Neighbors turned against each other, and communities that had once been united were now divided by suspicion and fear. Violence erupted in some cities, protests turned into riots, and the streets were filled with the sounds of conflict. The authorities struggled to maintain order as the situation spiraled out of control. The fragile alliance, built on hope and goodwill, began to crumble. The dream of a peaceful coexistence seemed more distant than ever as the world teetered on the brink of chaos. Section 5. The Truth Revealed. An Unexpected Source of the Plague. As fear and suspicion gripped the world, Dr. Morgan refused to give up hope. The global community was in turmoil, with people from all walks of life feeling the weight of uncertainty. News channels were flooded with speculations, and social media was ablaze with theories, many of which pointed fingers at the Caliph, the alien visitors who had crash-landed on Earth. The atmosphere was thick with anxiety, and trust was in short supply. Amidst this chaos, Dr. Morgan dedicated herself to finding the cause of the illness. She was a beacon of resilience, working day and night in her lab. Her colleagues often found her hunched over microscopes, meticulously examining samples. She was driven by a singular purpose: to uncover the truth and find a solution to the plague that was devastating both humans and Caliph alike. Working tirelessly in her lab, she analyzed samples, pored over data, and refused to rest. Her dedication was unwavering, and her determination was palpable. She often skipped meals and worked late into the night, her eyes red from lack of sleep but shining with determination. The lab became her second home, a place where she could channel her frustration and hope into tangible results. Finally, she made a breakthrough. It was a moment of pure elation, a culmination of weeks of relentless effort. She had discovered something that could change the course of the crisis. Her heart raced as she double-checked her findings, ensuring that there was no room for error. This was the moment she had been working towards, and it was finally here. The illness she discovered was not alien in origin. This revelation was both shocking and enlightening. It turned the prevailing narrative on its head. The pathogen that had caused so much suffering was not from another world but from our own. It was a mutated form of a common Earth-based bacteria, something that had been hiding in plain sight. It was a mutated form of a common Earth-based bacteria, a strain that had been dormant in the Nevada desert. This bacteria had existed for centuries, lying in wait beneath the arid soil. It was a silent threat, unnoticed and underestimated. The conditions in the desert had kept it in check, but something had changed, awakening this ancient menace. A strain that had been dormant in the Nevada desert, the very site of the Calith's crash landing. The impact of the crash had disturbed the delicate balance, releasing the bacteria into the environment. The Calith, with their advanced technology, had unknowingly triggered a chain of events that led to the outbreak. It was a cruel twist of fate, a tragic intersection of two worlds. The very site of the Calith's crash landing. The crash had not only brought the Calith to Earth, but had also unleashed a dormant threat. The bacteria, once confined to the desert, began to spread, infecting both humans and Calith. The initial assumption that the Calith were the source of the plague was now proven wrong. They were not the culprits, but the victims of this unforeseen disaster. The Calith, it turned out, were not the culprits but the victims. Their advanced physiology, which had allowed them to travel across the stars, was uniquely vulnerable to this mutated bacteria. The very thing that made them extraordinary also made them susceptible to this Earth-based threat. They had come to Earth seeking refuge only to be met with a deadly adversary. Their physiology, uniquely vulnerable to this mutated bacteria, was being ravaged even more severely than the human population. The Calith's immune systems were ill-equipped to handle this ancient earthly pathogen. The bacteria spread rapidly through their systems, causing symptoms that were even more severe than those experienced by humans. It was a devastating blow to a species that had already endured so much, was being ravaged even more severely than the human population. The Calith were suffering immensely, their advanced technology and knowledge unable to save them from this primitive yet deadly foe. The comparison between the effects on humans and Calith was stark, highlighting the cruel irony of the situation. The very beings who were initially blamed for the plague were suffering the most. Dr. Morgan immediately made her findings public. She knew that the world needed to hear the truth, that understanding the real cause of the plague was the first step towards finding a solution. She held a press conference, her voice steady but filled with urgency. The room was packed with journalists, all eager to hear her groundbreaking discovery. She explained the origins of the bacteria, the role of the Calith, and the path forward. The world held its breath, waiting to see if the truth could undo the damage caused by fear and misinformation. The revelation was a turning point, a chance to rebuild trust and work together towards a common goal. People watched the news anxiously, their faces a mix of relief and apprehension. The journey was far from over, but with the truth now known, there was a glimmer of hope on the horizon.